My son had been dead for only 43 days when I found a wedding ring taped beneath the driver's seat of his car. Andrew had never been married, but the moment my daughter Katherine saw the ring, she turned pale. She snatched it from my hand and said it was just a meaningless object. A few minutes later, she pulled her husband out of the garage. She thought I had gone back inside, but I stood behind the half-open door and heard my own daughter whisper, "Dad can't find out about Maya. If she brings the little girl here, we'll lose 30% of the company." My name is Thomas Reed. 6 weeks ago, I buried my only son. They said Andrew's car skidded in the rain, just a curve, a steel guardrail, and a phone call at 2:17 in the morning that split my life in half. I thought the cruelest thing a father could endure was watching his son's coffin being lowered into the ground. I was wrong. The cruelest thing was discovering that the people who stood beside me at the funeral had used his death to steal the woman he loved, the child he never introduced, and everything he had built. That afternoon, I cleaned out Andrew's wrecked car. Beneath the driver's seat, I found a metal box secured with tape. Inside was a gold wedding band, a receipt, a key marked with the number 214, and a folded paper with one line, Maya, followed by a phone number. Katherine and Mark walked in. Katherine snatched the box, her face changing instantly. Mark stepped between us, pretending calm. "You're grieving, Dad. Don't turn a meaningless object into a story." I pretended to leave, but stopped behind the door. I heard Katherine whisper, "Take the ring. No story." I shoved the door open. "What child are you talking about?" Katherine flinched. The box slipped. The ring rolled to my feet. Inside the band was an inscription. June 18th, 2024. Less than 3 weeks before Andrew died. I raised Katherine for 36 years. I knew when she was lying, she bit her lip, just like her mother. That evening, her lip began to bleed. I slipped the ring and paper into my pocket, took out my phone, and dialed the number. A woman's choked voice answered, "You're Andrew's father, aren't you?" He finally found the ring. Then a child's voice came through. "Mommy, is that Grandpa?" I didn't call the police. I called the woman who made me realize I might have missed the first 4 years of my granddaughter's life. The next morning, I met Maya at a small diner. She arrived with a little girl in a pale blue dress. The moment I saw her large, round eyes and the way she tilted her head, my heart tightened. She had Andrew's exact expression from when he was 4. Maya sat down. She opened her handbag and placed a thin file on the table. Inside were photographs of Andrew holding a newborn, pages of text messages, the receipt for the wedding ring, a draft of Andrew's vows, plane tickets for Maya and her daughter to meet me, and a video of Andrew teaching the child to ride a bike. Maya said, "I don't need your money. I need my daughter to know her father wasn't a coward who abandoned us." Andrew had told Maya that I didn't want to meet her. I never knew she existed. Someone had lied to both of us. Maya told me the story. Andrew and Maya had fallen in love years earlier. They planned to marry after resolving company conflicts. Then, Andrew died. At his funeral, Maya stood in the corner with her daughter. Katherine recognized her, called security, and had them thrown out into freezing rain while declaring Maya a con artist. Ella, my granddaughter, tugged my sleeve. She handed me a homemade card with a crooked red truck drawn on it. "Daddy said you like red trucks." I froze. I had once owned a red pickup truck. Andrew was the only one who knew I regretted selling it. Maya played a recorded voice message from Andrew. "If anything happens to me, wait until Dad finds the ring." Andrew didn't hide us because he was ashamed. He hid us because he was afraid of Mark. For the first time since Andrew died, I felt no grief, only fury. Andrew had lived like a fugitive in his own family. I read the emails Andrew had sent Maya. Katherine had told him I called her a gold digger and threatened to remove him from my will. Every birthday gift I sent, Katherine claimed he didn't want. Last Christmas, he called 3 times. Katherine told him I was in the hospital. I had been home alone. Maya also revealed that Andrew had discovered unusual payments in the company records. Mark was transferring money to a shell company. Andrew had gathered evidence but waited to expose him. Maya gave me the metal key I'd found in the car. Andrew had rented a storage unit. He said only I would understand what was inside. I drove to the storage facility. Inside Unit 214 was a small steel safe. I opened it with the key. Inside, a thick file, a copy of my late wife Helen's trust, Andrew's handwritten ledger, a backup hard drive, transfer invoices, and an envelope marked, "For Dad." I called the family attorney and a forensic accountant immediately. At the law office, the attorney explained, Katherine and Mark had declared Andrew had no children. They submitted a forged share transfer document claiming Andrew had given his 30% to Katherine. But Helen's trust stated that if a child died, that share passed directly to a biological grandchild. I opened Andrew's envelope. His handwriting, "Dad, I'm not addicted to gambling. I traced the money Mark stole. I tried to tell you, but Katherine always appeared first." The forensic accountant found the share transfer file, created 36 hours after Andrew died, using Mark's office account. That evening, I invited Katherine and Mark to dinner. I casually mentioned Maya. Katherine dropped her chopsticks. "She's a con artist. That child isn't Andrew's." I looked at them. "I only said a woman named Maya. I never said she had a child." The room went silent. Mark's glass tilted, spilling whiskey on the table. He recovered quickly, shifting to a cold tone. "You're not well, Dad. We think you should step down as chairman." Katherine slammed the table. "Andrew signed the transfer. He didn't want Maya or that child to have anything." I said, "So you admit you knew they existed?" "To protect this family," she shouted. "No," I said. "You did it to protect the money you stole from a 4-year-old. I pulled out the file creation log. "Mark," you said, "Andrew signed this 3 days before he died. Why was it created from your office account 36 hours after?" Mark froze. Katherine stared at me, her eyes cold and unrecognizable. "You don't know what Andrew did," she said. "I know he traced $428,000 that disappeared from the company," I replied. For the first time, Mark's fake smile vanished. The next 3 weeks passed in silence. I turned everything over to the legal team. Auditors uncovered the money trail, consulting payments to a shell company at Mark's brother's address, then transferred to Katherine and Mark's private mansion. Every invoice used Andrew's authorized account while he was away. Katherine had reset his password using her administrator privileges. I sat in my study and opened the final video from the hard drive. Andrew's gaunt face appeared. "Dad, if you're watching this, I'm not angry. I'm tired because every time I step toward you, Katherine says you've closed the door." I lowered my head onto the desk, trembling. I had spent 6 weeks blaming an accident. Only then did I understand that Katherine had taken him from me years earlier. The legal process for Ella moved forward. Andrew's notarized paternity declaration, health insurance records, and DNA test results. Then the forensic accountant called at midnight. Mark had called an emergency board meeting to approve a fire sale of the company's assets. We had 48 hours. My attorney filed an emergency motion. The court granted a temporary restraining order, halt the asset sale, freeze the disputed shares, preserve all records, and suspend Mark. The next morning, Mark sat at the head of the board table. He was about to raise his hand when the doors burst open. I walked in with my attorney and the court's process server. Mark shot to his feet. "You're destroying the company for some strange woman?" "No," I said. "I'm saving it from a man who calls theft management." Katherine glared at me. "You're choosing outsiders over your own daughter. You threw my granddaughter out of her father's funeral," I said. "Don't lecture me about family." The process server placed the court order in front of Mark. His control was officially restrained. After the meeting, the auditor handed me a new bank statement. On the day of Andrew's funeral, before the death certificate had frozen his accounts, someone logged into Andrew's account and transferred $86,000. The OTP verification code was sent to Katherine's phone. My daughter had stolen from her brother on the day of his funeral. 11 days later, we stood in court. My attorney presented the trust terms, the DNA results, and the digital logs proving the transfer was forged 36 hours after Andrew's death. Mark's attorney argued Andrew had verbally agreed, but the electronic evidence made those arguments hollow. I stood before the judge. "Katherine, you didn't just take Andrew's money. You took a child's right to say goodbye to her father. You took 4 years from a grandfather and his granddaughter. You took the final phone calls Andrew and I should have had." Katherine wept. Mark forced me. I presented the email she'd sent Mark before the funeral. "Maya must not get near Dad until the transfer documents are completed. If the little girl is recognized, we lose Andrew's share. Mark turned on Katherine. It was her idea. They tore each other apart in the courtroom. The judge ruled in our favor. The transfer was invalid. Andrew's 30% share passed to Ella under an independent trust. Mark was prosecuted for forgery and asset misappropriation. Katherine avoided prison but was fired, lost her reputation, and had to sell everything to repay her debts. I did not give the assets directly to Maya. I established a transparent trust that paid for Ella's education, medical care, and needs. Weeks later, Katherine stood on my doorstep, gaunt and thin. Dad, will you let me come back as an ordinary employee? I didn't take anything from you, I said. I'm only returning what you took from others. She cried. Will you never forgive me? Maybe one day, I said. But forgiveness does not mean giving the keys back to someone who once burned down the house. I required her to attend therapy, repay her debts, and rebuild with her own hands. I would not protect her again. 2 weeks later, at the first shareholder meeting, I personally opened the door for Maya and Ella. I placed a copy of Ella's ownership rights in the center of the table. This has belonged to her since the day she was born. Everyone stood and applauded. Maya smiled, tears in her eyes. Ella looked up at me. Grandpa, where is Daddy's ring? On Andrew's birthday, we went to the cemetery. I placed the gold ring in Maya's palm. She didn't put it on her finger. Instead, she threaded it onto a silver chain and placed it around Ella's neck. This ring proves you were not lying, I said. It proves Andrew had a family when he died. Ella touched the headstone. Does Daddy know Grandpa found me? If he hid the ring to lead me here, I said. I think he knows. The ring shimmered against my granddaughter's chest in the morning sunlight. It didn't prove Andrew had been married. It proved he had never lived alone. The betrayers tried to erase Andrew's true family. In the end, the very ring they wanted to throw away brought everything back to where it belonged.